Okay, Raleigh. So if you're a parent out there with kids who are soon to be school age, or whether your kids are already at school, or if you're moving into Raleigh from out of state, and we know there's certainly a lot of you guys out there, today's podcast is all about navigating the Wake County school system, and we know how overwhelming that can be. And we're excited to have Libby Taylor from School Up Wake, whose business it is to help families navigate, get some clarity, find some tools and resources to pick the best school for your child. Thanks for coming, Libby.
Absolutely. Hi, guys. That was perfectly said.
Yeah, I'd just like to start off by saying that parenting is tough. Like whether your kids are like 1 to 5 before school, whether your kids are in school, it's tough to be a parent on the weekends. It's tough on the go away on a vacation. And Caroline and I certainly have made a lot of mistakes throughout the parenting journey, and it's okay to get things wrong.
We all get them wrong.
Yeah. And I guess it's fair to say that picking a school for your child is one of the biggest decisions you probably make besides your life partner and your house. Is that fair to say?
Maybe. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. They spend a lot of time there. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's quite unusual for us as Australian, and I think we've spoken about this before, is that typically, I don't know, I don't feel like when I found out that you were like a consultant to help family find the right school for them, I was like, wow, that's really a thing. Like, people really need that.
We hire people to help clean our house.
Yeah.
People to help us find and buy a house.
Yeah.
And that's what I do. And maybe you're familiar with, in Australia, college counselors. So that's the big thing here, right? You hire someone to help your child discover what kind of college atmosphere would they thrive in. And it's the same thing that I do for K through 12. So there are people like me in other states, but I just felt like there was a real need here in Raleigh because we have so much choice. Parents don't have the time or the background to kind of really dive in and even know what kind of questions to ask. So
yeah, it is really confusing and complicated because, I mean, I've taught in America as well, but it was down in Smithfield in Johnson County, and it's like a small community. So typical to what we experience at home, it's kind of like, well, you've just got one school to go to, so you don't have to think too much about it. But when it came time last year, it was about this time last year, we started thinking, we're going to put our girls back into school because we were homeschooling. And we started looking and we were like, oh my gosh, we've missed the deadline to even enroll in things like magnet and charter schools. And then when you start looking at it, it's so overwhelming and confusing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like when we grew up in Australia, like you went to your local public school, or there was one private school to choose from, or maybe a Catholic school, and that was it.
Yeah, and a lot of areas of our country are like that, are still like that. So I work with lots of families relocating here, and that's what they're used to. And it can be that simple. I don't want to oversell it. It can be that simple here. You enroll at your base school. Everybody has a base school. But there are options if that's not a good fit for you that you can explore.
Yeah.
And so if someone was thinking of moving here, and how do they figure out the base school?
Sure.
And if that's a good place for them, if they just go to the base school and that's it, what's their sort of starting point there?
So Wake County Public Schools is our system, right? And I will point out that I think it's important for people to kind of know how the system works if they're going to enter it, right?
Yeah.
So we are a large school district. We are the 14th largest school district in the country, which is crazy if you think about our size. Yeah. So we're comparable to like a Chicago City Schools or an LAUSD. It's countywide. So it's not a municipal or a township school district. So Cary doesn't have their own schools. Wake Forest doesn't have their own schools. It's the whole county on one system. So I think the most recent number is 118 elementary schools and counting.
That's a lot.
They're building them every day. So that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different elements that go with that system. But when someone moves here or when they're ready to enroll their kids in the system, if they're already here, they go to Wake County's website and new student enrollment. And you can also click a button right there that says look up your base school. And it's what's called an address lookup tool. So you put in your address and you find out where you're assigned to go. And that'll give you an elementary, middle, and a high school that is your base school. And everybody is guaranteed a spot in those. Except, and I feel like I'm going to say except a lot of times today, except if you are new to the area and your base school is capped, you will see a note there that they might not have a seat for you because they are so full.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. So is base school, or is there a zone? Like, is there a difference? Like, or is it's just a base school?
Your base school is the school you're
like,
zoned for.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of terms around that, but your base school, those are the terms you'll hear Wake County use. That is who you are zoned for. Your address is zoned for a base school. Right. That's what we call that. Yep.
And if they're capped, what happens then?
So capping means a school is at capacity or already overcrowded, really is what they are. And they might not have a seat for your child if you're moving new to the area. So the history here is that the idea was to sort of push the burden onto families relocating here instead of having to do massive redistricting for the people already living here. So it's, it's a love or hate relationship with this concept, but that's what it is right now. And so you would get sent to what's called an overflow school. They will tell you that. So if you are moving in the summer and you buy a house in a school that is capped, they will let you know when you register, you're going to be sent to our overflow school. And that is, X school.
And it's another school.
It's another Wake County public school. Yes. Typically very close to the same proximity.
Okay.
Not always, but
Not
typically.
Always.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then are you responsible for transportation
They
then?
will provide transportation.
Oh.
That's a great question. They will provide transportation, and they will also do what are called callbacks. So they might call you and say mid-year or at the end of the year, call you and say, hey, we have a spot back at your base school. Would you like to take it?
Okay. Well, that's nice. So when you put in your address to find out your base school, it'll automatically tell you if it's capped, or you got to contact the school?
It will automatically tell you. And today's a super fun day because they just announced from the board meeting the new capped schools for next year. Oh, wow. So that has all been updated on the Wake County website.
That's something on the calendar for parents. Like so much to keep track of. Like,
It's on my calendar, but probably not everybody else's.
No.
But so they did uncap, for example, Combs Elementary, which is a magnet, and Lead Mine Elementary, which is in North Raleigh. And then they added a cap to a few other schools.
Oh, wow.
So, so you can find that on Wake County's website, the list of capped schools. But when you put in your address, it will show you that. Yep. And then you can always call the school and find out what their overflow is.
Right.
If you can't find it online.
So I know a lot of the base schools are also magnet schools, and we can talk a little bit about that. So who gets priority? Someone who's living in that for a magnet school? Someone who's living in that zone?
That's a good question.
Or?
Let me kind of explain how magnet schools work, and then I think it'll make more sense about who gets that priority, because there is priority, and sometimes people don't realize that. But magnet schools are still part of Wake County's public school system. They still have their own base area too. So I mentioned Combs, that is a base school and a magnet school, right? So a magnet school has a specialized theme, and then because of that specialized theme, they can attract students outside their base area. So they have a set number of seats in each grade level that they can fill by applications. Those applications are not essays, they're not grades, they're not any personal information. Those applications are done with different kind of priority markings, and I can explain those a little bit. But the intent of magnet schools is really to create diversity in our system. So I've heard it actually described, and I think this is a really good way to describe it, as sort of opposite of busing. So with busing, we take a pocket or a lower socioeconomic area, and we bus those kids into a higher socioeconomic area. And Wake County does bus. We have for a long time. Magnet schools work the opposite. They take people from a higher socioeconomic area, and these are Wake County's terms, and they move them or entice them to come to a magnet school that might be in a lower socioeconomic area or just have a higher percentage of students from that base population. And so they can even out and diversify schools quite a bit.
I love that. And is that something, I don't know if you know, but is this something that's specific to Wake County, or do you find this kind of thing around the country?
Schools, that's a great question. Magnet schools are all across the country. Okay. I spent a lot of time in DC working for some education nonprofits, and they have a lot of magnet schools there as well. There are some magnet schools in other areas of the country that are application-based, meaning you maybe have to provide grades or a particular talent. Ours are not. So that is a little bit different. And we actually have a nationally recognized magnet school program.
Oh, great.
Magnet Schools of America are the nonprofit, the national nonprofit that does awards. You'll see tons of awards if you go tour these schools or research them online. And we have a really recognized and popular magnet school system, and a very large one here. There's a lot of magnet schools.
So they automatically go into that national program? Like, are they connected to it automatically?
They're like a national nonprofit that's not connected to Wake County, but they do awards for magnet schools across the country.
Yeah, right.
And you will just see a lot of ours win some of their highest awards.
That's great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So people moving from out of state are familiar with magnet schools. Like
a lot of them are. It depends where you're moving from. Right, yeah. My Midwest families, not as typically as other areas.
Prominent.
Yeah.
Just getting back to the cap, like it's tough, like with so many people moving into Wake County, like 60 people a day or something. Obviously there's people leaving as well. So there's
nobody's leaving.
Yeah, I know. It's like there's no houses available. No one's leaving.
But yeah, it's tough. Like, the school, like everything's bursting at the seams. Like it's tough to buy a house. It's tough to find a school for your kids to go to and stuff. But yeah, so I guess a lot of people aren't familiar with the cap system. The base school, does that ever change? Like if they build a new school, do they
That's a good
change
question.
the boundaries?
They do. And they're building schools as fast as they can. Absolutely. And some really cool new designs, by the way. Some of these new buildings are really amazing. But so if they build a new school, they will, pull a population to go to that school. They are very sensitive to keeping siblings together, to keeping upper grade kids in their school. Wake County does not want to disrupt anyone's education.
Sure.
And so you'll see things like if you are a fifth grader, a rising fifth grader, they use a term grandfathering. So you can grandfather to stay in your school. Likewise, 8th grade or junior or senior year. So like when they open a new high school, they'll move in 9th and 10th graders, but they'll let juniors and seniors stay where they are. So that we're not disrupting anyone's education.
Oh, that's great.
It can happen. I mean, when you're growing, there are issues with that that come up, right? There are bumps in the road. And part of that is that sometimes they do have to redistrict schools, which means that your children can get sent to a new base school if they have to kind of move your neighborhood and reassign it somewhere else. It's possible. It's not probable. It doesn't happen as often as I think the comments on Facebook would make you feel like it does.
You gotta be wary of those Facebook comments.
And typically a new school is a really exciting place to be.
Yes, I agree.
And a really wonderful thing. So I would never worry about that. And I do think people automatically feel like an overflow is not going to be as good as their base school. And that's not typically true. Often the overflows are really amazing, sometimes even higher academically performing schools. It really just depends. It depends on how many houses they're building in an area and whether or not that school can fit. So it's always important to find out who your overflow school is and then do the research on that school so that you're not just assuming it's not as good as the original.
Yeah, I had no idea I don't know why I have this thought process, like an overflow school, whether it's a physical finished campus. It's not like a bunch of portable mobile classrooms or something like that.
It's usually like another
established school.
Yeah, very nice. So let's see, I'll give you an example. I think right now Apex Friendship High School overflows to Apex High School.
Right.
Apex Friendship just happens to be the area where a lot of new development is happening. And so they're overflowing to Apex High School. That's an amazing high school.
It is.
So, and typically it could be just about the same distance from your house. It really depends. There are some areas that you could travel further. That would be the only concern of overflowing there. It's a beautiful school.
Yeah.
And so would you find the overflow schools and the new schools that are getting built, are you going to come across that more in the newer neighborhoods as opposed to, say, if you're looking at, downtown Raleigh somewhere where it's not it's kind of can't really grow much anymore?
That's probably true.
Yeah.
So there are a few capped schools on the north side. So there is some complication there, and then there's quite a bit in the Cary, Apex, and down into Holly Springs area. Yeah, but
that
if you're
kind
of inside the Beltline, there's fewer. There's fewer. There's also that's the largest collection of magnet schools would be inside the Beltline. So there's also a lot of opportunity for people to move around there. So all those things factor in.
And if someone is, so they're coming here and they've checked out their base school and they're going into an overflow school. And so if they don't want to do that, what's their next option then?
That's a great question. So I kind of go in order when I'm advising people to talk about in the order that you would apply to them, because that makes the most sense in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But so there are two differences here that I'll point out. So if you are moving here, you get 10 days after you enroll in Wake County and get your student assignment. You get 10 days to apply for a transfer.
Okay.
If you're already here, you go through the winter of the year prior to entering that school. So people would know this most often is like your pre-K year before kindergarten. That's the winter that you're going to apply to some different options.
So right now in February, January, February.
In fact, Sunday is the deadline for Magnet School, February 6th. It's typically the end of January, but they did extend it a little bit. But so your very first option is actually going to be a calendar option. So if your base school is traditional, you can apply to go to a year-round calendar. We do have year-round and traditional calendars. And then your second option is going to be magnet schools. And you can find that list on that address lookup tool, the same place you find your base school. And then after that, you can apply to what we call public tuition-free charter schools. Those kind of run the end of winter. Those applications open, and then you also have private schools. So there's a range of private schools as well. So those are kind of your basic options. If your base school is not a good fit, or if it's overcrowded and you don't want to go to an overflow, I encourage people to kind of look at all those options.
And so you said after the base school, you can go for year round. So does that mean each area has a base school that's traditional and year round? Do you get two options?
They are. So you get the opposite of whatever your base school is. So there are those calendar options in all of our areas. So if your base is year-round, you can apply to a traditional calendar school. And if your base is traditional, you can apply to a year-round calendar school.
And it would be in the area that you're living in?
It would be in the area, as close as they can get it.
So is everyone in America familiar with traditional and year-round calendars? Because I know we weren't, because we just had the one calendar.
Probably not.
So if someone's moving here, like the difference between a traditional and a year-round, and all the different tracks and stuff, because we have friends that are teachers and they're on different tracks. They never see each other.
And then they're
they can't take vacations together and stuff like that. It's like a bit of a headache.
It is crazy.
So traditional is probably what most people are used to. That's, because hence the name traditional. So you're off in the summer, and then you start, typically we start late August here. That does vary around the country, but and then you have the holiday breaks, spring break, it's pretty typical in America, and then your summer break. A year-round school is a little different, and this does offer Wake County the opportunity to put more children in a school. So it does alleviate some of that growth without capping a school. But it also offers parents a different schedule. And a lot of people, I feel like it's a little like Duke and UNC basketball. Like you got to be on one side, the other nobody's neutral.
We're team year-round.
Heavily debated.
Heavily debated.
It is.
People either love year-round school or my husband is not a fan, and he will joke and say, like, that's just un-American.
Some people don't like change.
It's very Australian,
it's like
un-American.
Grow up with that. But like we've kind of like, and I guess it depends on your life situation. For us, that we work for ourselves and run our own business, we like the flexibility of the year-round first, and then I don't understand how two working parents deal with the 10-week summer break. Like it's expensive for summer camps.
That's interesting, because I've seen all different types of families like the same things. Some people, like to find childcare one time for the summer and make that arrangement, and they don't want to have to do it every 9 weeks.
Oh, that makes sense.
So the way a year-round works, so everyone's familiar, is that it's basically 4 different tracks. And you're on for 9 weeks and off for 3. So one of those tracks is always tracked out, which allows a school to house more students. And then it does put those breaks in different places. So I've heard from families that, they like to be able to take a vacation in the fall, particularly 2 parents working outside the home. It's hard to take all your vacation in the summer. So having that can be great. But you do have those 3-week breaks built in. There are lots of track out camps available everywhere. And I will mention that there are some charter and private schools that are year round that don't have multiple tracks. And there are some of our schools that only have 1 track as well. Some of our Wake County schools only have 1 track. So you do kind of want to know that going in. But typically going in, you can preference which track you want to be on.
Okay.
Of course, if you're moving here and you're coming in with older kids, then you might, only have 1 or 2 track options that have seats available.
And they'll do their best to put families on the same track.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. They even, if you have a year-round elementary and a traditional middle, they'll even help move a child to a track that most aligns with a traditional calendar.
Oh, okay.
I've seen them just be really accommodating to families and family schedules, and they'll put siblings on the same track as well.
Oh, that's really good.
Cool. So
that's great.
So if you have like 2 or 3 kids coming into the cap school challenge and overflow and stuff, do they like to keep the kids at the same school?
They do.
Because that would be
they always
challenging with like whether it's the bus transport or carpool situation, which we're dealing with. We've got 2 kids at 2 different campuses.
Yes.
So well, that's good if they like to keep the kids.
They do. And there's never a guarantee. I've seen strange things happen. But again, it's possible. It's not probable. They keep siblings together whenever possible.
Yeah.
And so charter schools you mentioned, I know that's very confusing for a lot of people, especially since it's publicly funded. So what exactly is a charter school and why does someone consider a charter school?
Great question. So magnet schools and these year-round and traditional are all part of the Wake County public school system, but charter schools are not. So I describe charter schools as public tuition-free schools, but they don't operate under Wake County. They operate under the state. So they do follow all state laws, same state education standards, same rules. They cannot be religiously affiliated. They cannot charge tuition. They cannot discriminate admissions to their school. So they use what's called a lottery system, a state-approved lottery system. So it is random lottery. You get a number when you put your name in, and then they literally used to draw them out of the hat and like pull the cards, and you could go watch.
Wow.
I'm probably the only dork who ever went and did that, who didn't have kids in the lottery, but you can do that, and now it's more of a computer system.
Yeah, not as fun, but
not nearly as fun to watch. But that's how they do it. So they function a little bit in between the way an independent school would and the way a public school would. So they do have to follow those state laws in education. They do take the same end of grade testing. So you can compare the academic performance of a charter school to a Wake County public school. And the best place to do that is the North Carolina State Report Cards. So you can see all the same data, apples to apples. Okay. But what can be different is the grade levels spanned. Some of them go K through 8 or even K through 12. They can have uniforms. They can require parent participation. And some of them do. And they can have a theme more like what a magnet school would have. But not all of them do. They don't have to. But basically a volunteer board, goes in front of the State Charter Advisory Board and puts together an application. They say, we would like to open this type of school in this location of this size with this curriculum. It's all very specific. They go through an application process, an interview process, and then if they're awarded a charter, and that's really what it's called, that's where they get their name, they can open their school, and then they are regulated, checked up on by the state. There is a State Charter Advisory Board.
And so anyone can go through that process?
Anyone can go through that process, and anyone in North Carolina can go through that process. So if you live in Johnston County, but you want to go to a Wake County charter school, that is open to you. It is not county-based.
Interesting.
And so you just have to find your own way to the school?
Most of them do not do transportation.
And are they typically, they all K to 12 as well? Because I see a lot of talk online, some family will start their kids off at a public school, and then they'll launch into a different type of school, try and navigate the process.
Yes. So I see people do it for all different reasons. But a lot of them are K through 8. I'd say the most of them are K through 8. There's one in North Raleigh that's 3 through 8. And then there are a couple that are K through 12, but there are definitely fewer actually. And then there's Raleigh Charter High School, which is just a high school.
So you have to fill in the gaps somehow.
You do. So I've seen people start in a Wake County public school and then use a charter school as a middle school or high school option. I've seen people, start in a charter school and then go to their public high school when they're finished there, or go to a private high school when they're finished. So there's kind of a range of movement among different types of schools.
And just a question that my daughter keeps saying to me, and I'm like, I'm not sure that's correct. So I'm going to ask you. She has told me that you can only get into a magnet or charter school if you've been to a traditional school first for a year.
Not true.
I didn't think so. I was like, honey, I don't think that's true. She's adamant that it's true.
I know where this is coming from.
Wow, that's a good question, though. I didn't know that.
I can guess where that's coming from. So a charter school, you can apply at any time. You can start in kindergarten and never attend any other school and go straight to a charter school. You can go from charter to private to traditional public, which would be Wake County Public Schools. If you want to go to a magnet school, there is something called magnet pathways. And so magnet pathways mean you start at a school or in a program. Let's say you want to do a leadership program. Or we have a really popular magnet program here called Gifted and Talented, which is all about exploring a child's talents. And there are middle school and high schools on that pathway. So if I start in a gifted and talented elementary school, then there's a middle school that I get first choice into. So if you were at a charter school or a private school and you wanted to go to a middle or a high school for magnet school, it would be difficult for you to get a seat because they're going to prioritize all the current magnet students first.
Okay.
Wow. We've only been talking for like 20 minutes and I'm overwhelmed.
No, my job is amazing.
I know.
No, you're doing a great job of that. Sorry, no, you're doing a great job of that.
No, you are. I'm just
like for us as well, from being foreigners from Australia coming here, and it's and even though you taught in the system, still it's changed a lot, I guess. And Johnson County is different than Wake County.
It's very different.
But so it's like everything. America's like when we first come here, the grocery store is like 100 different baked bean options. Like there's just so much.
Oh, we were very overwhelmed.
Like, oh my god, Australia's like one or two.
We have that many baked beans. Imagine how many education.
We got like one or two of everything. We haven't even
gotten into alternative options.
I know.
Australia has like one or two airlines, one or two banks, one or two everything. So America's just like obviously it's a population thing as well. Like there's a gazillion people in America. It's like options. That's the one thing we love about living in America. Options.
We do.
Options are good,
even though it's overwhelming.
They can be overwhelming.
Options are good. They can be overwhelming. That's right.
I mean, it's so great for parents, and a lot of these have sprung up, these options, because of the population. But it's so nice for parents, even though it is overwhelming for them to realize there is a choice that's probably more suitable to their family and their child, which I think is amazing.
I think that's a perfect way to say it.
Yeah.
Every family has different values. And there is a school, probably more than one out there, that is a great fit for your family's values.
Yeah.
That's a perfect way to say it.
Yeah, as I said before, like you make mistakes as parents and we will continue to do so. Like if the initial school that you choose for your child doesn't work out, like there's another option. Whereas for us growing up, we kind of had to just stick it out and deal with it.
Enjoy that when you're in.
We didn't have another choice, and homeschooling is not popular at all in Australia. So
that's starting to grow.
It wasn't even. I'd never heard of it when I was a kid. Like we did.
There are even hybrid homeschool options now.
Oh, that's great.
There are some schools I know of where you can go 2 or 3 days a week, and then
I love that.
The other couple days.
I love that.
There's more options.
Yeah,
there really are. I just like to tell people if you think something else would work better for your child, then we can find it.
You can find it.
Yeah, because it's out there.
I love that. I have one more question before we move on to private schools.
Yeah, I've got another public school question.
Okay, so someone really wants to live in one area. They really want to live in one area, but they really want to go to this other school, and it's not magnet or charter, it's just a base school. Is there any way they can get into that school?
So it is possible. It doesn't happen very often. So you can put in a transfer to any other public school. And that is done after the magnet school application closes. So typically the transfer application would open the end of February and into March. And that you could do a transfer to a traditional calendar. So if you're on a year-round base and you want to go to a traditional calendar, or any other school that's open to transfer. And you can look that up on Wake County's website. If you go to Change My School, you can look up what schools might be open to transfer. I would recommend to people listening to this to do it as soon as possible, because that is first come, first serve. So if they do have seats available and you have a reason, typically they call it a hardship transfer.
Okay.
So whatever your reason is, whatever the reason your base school is not a good fit for you, you will explain in that application and you will put in for a transfer.
And what would some of those hardships explanations be?
I've seen transportation is a big one. I've
Okay.
seen families where, let's say, a grandparent might be picking the kids up from school every day.
Yep.
You can put in a transfer to the school that's in their area.
Mhm.
I've seen transfers to schools that are near where parents work,
Okay.
so that you are closer to their school. I've seen transfers because of a particular curriculum. So we do have some STEM schools here. I've seen transfers be accepted to STEM schools because that's something that's important to the family.
Yeah.
So what's a STEM
That's great.
school for anyone
unfamiliar with
the
that?
term?
So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. So a STEM school will have a heavy focus on
And that's
integrating.
magnet school usually?
Not always.
Mm-mm.
No, we have a lot of so like York on the north side is probably a pretty popular one, but they are in the STEM collaborative. They do have STEM integration in their curriculum and STEM specials as well, but they're not a magnet or a charter or anything. They're just a traditional base school. So I've seen people apply for a transfer there in order to have more of that technology engineering type of project work for their students.
And they're responsible for getting their child to school?
You are.
Yeah.
In a hardship transfer, you are. Yes.
A lot of variables at play here.
I will mention that I'm not sure we said this. If you do a calendar option, they will provide transportation for you. So if you go to your calendar option, if I apply to my year-round option, they'll provide a bus for that.
Okay.
And magnet schools depend on where you live. So you can see on the address lookup tool if you have transportation or not. But some magnet schools do provide transportation to your neighborhood.
Oh, that's amazing.
Some do an express bus, and then some is parent provides transportation.
Okay.
Cool.
It's amazing.
Now, you mentioned Wake County schools like they're one of the biggest in the country and stuff because of the content that we create on our site. Like a lot of people moving to Raleigh read our stuff because we have real estate stuff and relocating. And they always ask, like, does Wake County have good schools? And I'm like, I never know how to answer it. But typically since we moved here in 2004, they've had a pretty good reputation. I guess that's still the case and how they stack up academically, nationally.
So that's a tough question because to me that varies dramatically from family to family and how you evaluate if a school is a great school. So my short answer is yes, these are safe, happy places to be where kids are learning and thriving. However, a great school to me is evaluated not just on academics. And I encourage families not to put too much weight on great schools numbers. People love that website for their numbers. But in a district like ours where schools are much more diverse and there is a much more the economics of it are different. We are not, just small little suburbs that have 2 elementary schools. We're a much more diverse area where students are moved around. And we do have large percentages of students in Wake County that come in not speaking English. So there are a lot of factors that play into performance scores that I don't think are always a perfect interpretation of whether a school's a good school or not. So to me, it's a school that has teachers who want to be there, that is a safe and happy place to be, that has PTA and community involvement. They're building connections with communities and parents, and those parents and community members are excited to be at the school. They have school pride, and they're trying to do interesting and innovative things, and they're moving kids ahead no matter where they are. I think overall, our schools absolutely fit that. Sometimes a school goes through a transition of all kinds, private, charter, public, they all go through different transitions, and it's not always a perfect fit for your family. But overall, I think parents can absolutely find a number of great schools that do fit what their family's looking for.
Yeah, and I think it really kind of speaks just from, observing, I guess, is, Raleigh has gone through the whole of Wake County, incredible growth over the last 10 or more years, even more than that. It really kind of shows the innovation, the flexibility, the adaptability that the county's been able to have to come up with these different ways of accommodating that,
I agree.
year-round, calendar, magnet, charter. I mean, it really is kind of forward thinking. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't really have anything else to compare it to across the USA, but it just sort of feels that way to me.
When you're growing at the rate that we're growing, you have to get creative. It just it creates all kinds of different problems. And I've seen this kind of growth in schools. There are other areas in the country where they're doing different things to address that. Somebody's always gonna be unhappy about that.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah,
there
it's
are
change.
good and bad to all of it. It's change. That's right.
Growing
I've seen
pains.
places where they send the 5th grade up to the middle school because they don't have enough room.
Yeah,
I've seen redistricting of the people who've been in those schools forever. So, things like capped schools and year-round schools, that's Wake County's way of working with them.
Yeah, I guess like that's a question we get all the time, as I said, because like going back to Australia, like people I know over here move into a particular neighborhood because they want to go to that school, but I don't recall anyone when I grew up with like buying a house or living in a particular area because of the school. Like it's just, you just lived where you lived. So I know how important it is for people over here to figure that out.
There are lots of other areas in our country where they do that. You buy a house because you want into that really good district. But I think the opportunity here is that particularly in this market where apparently buying a house is crazy.
It's a tough period.
Very tough. I think the school doesn't have to get in the way of your dream house. There are a lot of other options. You can apply to different types of schools. Most of my clients are doing all the options. So we're looking at transfers and magnet applications. We're looking at charter schools. We're looking at private schools. And by doing all of that, you're going to have a lot of doors open to you. So you can find a home in a community that you love and a school that fits what your children need.
It's so valuable for people to have you to move them through that.
Absolutely. Well, that's a service.
The intent.
A lot of people I'm sure would get tremendous value, like just navigating all this process.
Absolutely, especially if you're moving into the area because you're dealing with buying a house, setting up a new job and all of that takes months and months. Like to just be able to sit with someone who can help guide you through that and so that you're not missing deadlines like you have to apply for charter school like now, and people don't know that. Like we didn't know that and we missed out.
Like we made the decision like to put our kids back into traditional school and we missed certain deadlines, like you said, and had no idea like what was due and when and for the different type of school. That's a lot to keep up with.
My intent is there's different information in different places. So if I can curate that for people and keep it in one place.
Package it all.
I'm doing it all day, every day. So I've heard the tricks. I've heard the, the good and the bad. And I think even more importantly, I'm unbiased and I'm neutral. So I'm not going to advocate for one type of school or another. And that's tough. If you talk to your best friend or your next door neighbor, that everybody drinks the Kool-Aid of whatever school they're in or whatever type of schooling they're in. And so, but that's hard. Your best friend is going to say, oh, I love this school. And then you might go tour that school and say, oh, that was loud and messy. I don't know why they liked that. And that's what having a neutral voice to talk to can do is say, what do you need? What's important to you? And that's the first thing I encourage all my families to do is sit down together and literally write down what are the most important values to you. And then let's keep that on paper and let's take that as we look at school so we don't lose sight of that. And we can you do it when you're buying a house, right?
Yeah.
You say, I have to have 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms or whatever. And
what are your must-haves?
What are your must-haves and what can you compromise on?
What are things that are nice but not necessary?
Yeah.
So exactly like a bonus, but
that's exactly
that's great.
Definitely
like,
helped
you can
us
listen to your neighbor and your cousin and whatever, but I guess no one knows your own children like you do.
Right,
and
absolutely.
They're different because our kids are vastly different personalities, different learning. They learn differently. So what's a good fit? I guess you got to trust your own instinct and knowledge of your own kids as well. But I guess there's the social pressure too. I guess of
there's a lot of that.
Keeping up with whoever and okay, so.
What about
so that's Wake County public. There's public schools, charter schools, magnet schools. Yeah, private schools. There's a lot of private school choices as well. What are the
as many as I think people want.
The main difference between a private school versus public, and a couple of reasons.
Sure,
people would go to a private school.
Private school is going to charge tuition, though there's financial aid available. I think people don't always realize that. But it is going to be outside the sort of scope of public education. So they can be religiously affiliated. Many of them here are. So if you're writing down your list of priorities and values and a community of faith is really important to you, then you want to look at private schools. And they are all a little bit different, but they are going to charge tuition. They are all going to be very independent. They do not take the same end of grade testing that public schools take. So they have different types of testing. They have different types and ranges of curriculum, and they also span different grade levels. This is complicated because they are all completely independent. So you do have to go to each website individually. You do have to find out about what's involved in the application. There is often interviews. There are often, tours and applications, sometimes essays, sometimes recommendation letters, application fees, but it's different for everybody. So you have to, first I would say absolutely look in your proximity in your area because you don't want to drive all the way across town. And then because there is not typically transportation, and then look at your budget as well. There's a wide range starting from kind of the $5,000 to $7,000 a year all the way up to $30,000 a year. So
we've seen those ones.
Sit down and figure out your budget.
And I know it's a whole new world for us. Again, the high school to college transition, completely different to what we're used to. So I know that's so big for families to consider. Can parents feel, I don't know if safe's the right word, but confident in that private schools can check all those boxes that their child needs to move from high school to college?
That's a great question. So that does depend on the school and on what your college goals are for your student.
Okay.
So there's something you can look at in high schools called the academic profile, and that's what colleges and universities will look at to evaluate your student when they apply. So you can look at those and see a lot of that data. You can see that information that colleges will look at when assessing your child. That's a great way to kind of look at a high school and pick a high school that fits your goals.
So colleges evaluate the student based upon the school they came from?
So they evaluate the student, and this is not my expertise. There are some amazing college counselors in Raleigh. Their expertise, but I do. It is a complicated thing. I did a recent blog post on picking a high school with college in mind. And then once you get to high school, I hand you off to a college planner. But, and I can recommend some great ones. So
thank you.
There's something called the academic profile for a high school. And when your child applies to college, they will be looking at your child's transcript, and they will be looking at it in the context of the school in which they came, right? So they're not going to compare what your child is doing to something that's not offered at their school or something that's at a different school that was not an opportunity for that child. So they're looking at them within the context of their high school. And a college planner can certainly go into that in more detail, but you can look at an academic profile as a way of evaluating high schools if you are picking a high school for your child. And that'll have data like SAT scores, ACT scores, percentage of national merit scholars, courses available, all those goodies. And they are, I think that's kind of an easy apples to apples because all these high schools will have them private and public.
Oh, okay.
When are parents starting to think about all this stuff, like talking to students as well, talking to a college
when their
council,
children are born?
I feel sad.
I wouldn't be shocked.
We've missed the boat again.
Stories like that. Again, I don't want to keep harping on Australia, but like not everyone goes to college in Australia. It's nothing like
not everyone does here. Not
but
everyone
I think
does here. It depends on what your goals are.
Greater percentage do over in the US. It kind of seems like it's the typical
transition
passage in life. But but yeah, like we had career advisors, I think they were called. But I never spoke to one once.
Schools do have college counselors at the school. So you will see those in the high schools. There are private ones. And I've worked a lot with a group called Advantage College Planners.
I think I've heard of that.
They're great. You should have them on your podcast.
Yeah, we can. We can.
Great.
Yeah,
thank
leave
you.
all the resources. We'll link to in our show notes. But if you're watching it on Instagram or YouTube, as we'll put the links in the descriptions too.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's a lot of resources out there.
And I asked them this question: when do you like to start working with students? Really, because so in 8th grade is when you're applying to high school, and that's where my knowledge maxes out. And then a group like Advantage would love to start working with students the end of 8th grade because there's some opportunity to advise them on courses to take in high school That's not necessary, but that is an option. If you want to get some advice, say you have a particular program or a particular university that you have your sight set on, they can help you with that. They can help you with course selection in high school and kind of on that path to college. But then often people do it, I think, kind of in the middle of high school. So for junior and senior year, as you're starting to think about writing essays for college applications, SAT testing, that sort of thing, that would be a great time to reach out to them as well.
So that's important to know when you're looking at a high school so that you know the courses that are offered in that high school. Like if you know the path you want to go down.
I think so. And I get a lot of questions about, so we have something called the IB program here. Maybe you're familiar with that in Australia? IB, International Baccalaureate.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And that actually goes all the way K through 12. So a lot of the families I'm working with who are picking a high school are looking at or trying to decide between a school that might offer AP courses for the most rigorous level available, or a school that has AP and IB, or International Baccalaureate, and kind of comparing those two versus a private school that might not offer those same types of courses. Some private schools are teaching all their courses at that level. So they won't make the distinction between AP and regular. They're teaching all of their classes at that level. So those are considerations when you are selecting a high school. And I do encourage parents who have specific goals to look at those academic profiles to see, all that data. And you can also see where kids are going to college on those lists. And then to look at kind of what courses are available and would be the best fit for your student. Because IB's awesome. I think that program is fantastic, but it's not a perfect fit for everybody. And other people prefer to do the AP classes and just take the advanced level for what they're most interested and passionate about. And those are all options as well.
Yeah.
And if a private school just taught at that level and didn't make the distinction, would I know that as a parent when I'm researching? Do they let me know through their material? Okay.
Yes. Again, that academic profile, I think their websites are fantastic. I would never encourage anyone to go to a school without touring it in person. If you can. I know that's tricky now.
It's at the moment,
At the moment, they did do quite a few tours and now things are a little bit more shut down again. But I think that's the best way to find out if this school is the right fit for your family, if it feels like your people. And then you can get that kind of information on a tour. You can get that kind of information on their website, and then also in their academic profile, and know that the sort of range of curriculum and courses offered, everything from taking dual enrollment classes to get college credit, to taking AP classes and AP exams, which can also sometimes offer college credit. All that information would be found on those sites.
Okay, fantastic. And with private schools, is there a deadline for applying to them like there is magnet and charter?
That is a great question. So there is mostly, yes, some fill up a lot faster than others. There are some private schools that are popular. So if you were looking at kindergarten, I would say maybe perhaps you want to look at pre-K because those pre-K students are going to get first right to those seats in kindergarten. Yeah. That's right. If you're looking at high school and sixth grade, those are big entry years. So typically, I would advise someone to look in the winter. There are some deadlines that come up and start kind of end of January and February. Not everybody, so there are still options if you've missed that deadline. But that's when I would start in order to not be behind.
Great, we're releasing this podcast at the right time.
Okay, perfect.
Yes,
right in winter. One thing we're worried about.
It's like everyone, quick, go.
Let's get it out there.
Apply now.
Okay, so private schools. So the costs vary. The focus varies, like a different faith or non-faith based,
or non-faith,
and different application processes. Again, figure out, go directly to the school, or because obviously the Wake County Public School has information on their sites for charter schools and not charter schools, magnet schools.
For magnet schools,
but private schools is individual resources.
I do keep on my website a resource page that can walk you through a lot of what we talked about today.
Awesome.
And so most of the pieces for Wake County is gonna link you directly to their pages. And then I do keep lists of charter schools, maps, so you know where they're located.
Oh, great.
Some basic info so that you can see that holistically. And then it, again, will link out to those individual pages. And then similarly with private schools, some basic info to get you started, and then and then kind of link you out. But the goal is for me to kind of curate it all together for you, so you have a one-stop shop.
Oh,
that
great.
you can return to and then link you out to the correct information.
So helpful, and we'll put that in the show notes so people can easily find that.
Yeah. So for the parents out there who have like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, like where do they start, and when should they start talking to someone like you?
Oh, that's a good question. I like to start early because to me that you can go slowly and carefully and you don't have to feel rushed. But to some people that feels rushed and overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I would say if you plan on exploring options outside of your base school, I would encourage you to start the fall of your pre-K year. So your final year before kindergarten, that's typically around the time the kid is turning 5 because you have to be 5 to go to kindergarten. You can start as early as 2 or 3 and get the lay of the land and take your time talking to people you know. I think that's a great way to do it. If you do plan to move, I do get a lot of families who plan to move in that age. And so they want to go ahead and move into an elementary school base area that they like. We can do that as well. So any time frame in there, but if you are going to plan other applications, I would do it starting in the fall of your pre-K year. Likewise for the other grades. So that would be fall of 5th grade and then fall of 8th grade if you're going into upper grade schools.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you have a lot of resources on your site and stuff. So what services actually do you provide? Like, and how do you work with people specifically?
Sure. So I have a couple different ways. And the first one I'll mention is different events that I do. These are all virtual right now, but I will have one in March for folks relocating here.
Okay.
And those are kind of an introduction to Wake County schools, where I walk through these different options we talked about. I answer questions, and I map it all out for everyone with timelines and handouts. So I do have one for people relocating in March because that's a time frame they are typically starting to look at so that they can move here in the summer. And then I do those in the summer and the fall for folks who are local, kind of an introduction to kindergarten or for middle and high school students. So those go throughout the fall. So those are one of the things you'll find on my site is the events and talks. Hopefully some of these will be in person.
So the March one is virtual.
The March one is virtual because most of my relocation
an
clients.
hour or longer?
They are about an hour. They are about an hour, and then I hang out and answer personal questions at the end. So you can, they're kind of webinar style.
Right.
For parents. So you could do them, with your glass of wine and your jammies from home.
Perfect. Gosh, I wish we knew you a year ago.
Yeah.
And then the other option would be...
So events, okay. The events.
Yep. The other option would be personal consulting or private consulting. So I sit down with a family one-on-one. That's right. And we walk through your values and we outline what you're looking for, what's important to you. And then we come up with a list of schools that fit that, and I help you navigate the process of applying to those. And so that is for folks moving here and for folks who are already here. And we kind of do it together.
And then after they apply, is there anything, do you maintain contact?
Once they are placed somewhere, then our work together is complete. I do help a little bit with kind of different resources for advocating for your student and different, resources, things you need to know as you move through the grade levels. I do have an email list. I hope everyone listening will sign up for that. And so I do try to stay with families. So if I help you get into a kindergarten, then, I'm going to help you with that information leading into middle school and high school and what you need to know and what to think about. So that email list, we will keep in touch that way. And then I often work with families again when they're
I can imagine.
Yeah. How often are you emailing out, like once a month or something?
So my emails right now are just twice a month. I don't like to overwhelm.
No.
I think with this kind of topic, twice a month is great.
Yes, and I do kind of inside tours of schools because I'm constantly touring every school out there and constantly talking to families. So that will be in the emails. Different interviews I do with specialists, I have those in the emails that links out, and then kind of like tips and tricks, deadlines, things like that.
Yeah,
awesome.
Very valuable.
Just quickly before we wrap it up, apologies if we didn't get your background, like how you
sure.
Yeah, just give us a brief rundown of your background and how you got into doing what you're doing now. So passionate about it. Yeah.
So I'll give you the long version. So I actually started out my career working at the Atlantic magazine, or Atlantic Monthly, as people know, in Washington, D.C., and then moved into working for an education nonprofit there. I did events, and that really made me feel passionate about working in the nonprofit world for education.
Mhm.
So I did go on to get my master's, and that's how I ended up in Raleigh at
Mhm.
UNC to get my master's.
Mhm.
And then I taught for a while, both in Durham schools and in Wake County schools.
Mhm.
I taught high school,
Wow.
so I love my teenagers.
Yeah.
And then,
Braver than me.
yes. And then when I had my own children, I ended up going to work for a nonprofit, the National Humanities Center,
Mhm.
which is in Research Triangle Park, and we did professional development for teachers. The great thing about that was I got to work with and get to know teachers all across the country.
Mm.
And so I got an understanding of how California, runs their school system, how Ohio runs their school
Mhm.
system. And that has been really valuable in this work when I'm talking to families who are relocating from those areas.
Mm.
That I know a little bit about how their school systems work.
Oh yeah.
And then around that time, this is where the Atlantic comes back in, saw a really interesting article in the Atlantic about a school selection consultant in New York. And so I started following her and reached out to her to ask her about what she was doing. And she was really lovely to respond and to connect with me. And I felt like we had a need for that here.
Yeah.
So I founded School Up in about 2017. So it's
Wow,
been about
yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, I thought it was going to be a side hobby. I
Yeah.
was just going to help some people out. And it exploded from there.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
I've been lucky to continue to grow, and I am continuing to grow and be able to help lots of different families.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
I love it.
I
That's
have
great
the teacher
story.
and the
Definitely,
nonprofit background.
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
the need
lots
there
of
for you. And,
experience.
that's great that you're providing that service.
Oh,
and
it's fantastic.
tools and
Yeah.
resources and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, that's
I
excellent.
hope so.
Where can people connect with you? Like your website, URL,
Yep.
and if you're on social anywhere? Or
Yes, I am. Begrudgingly, you have to do that these days, whether you're good at it or not.
We understand that
we do
term begrudgingly.
Yeah, so the website is schoolupwake.com. My email is simply libby@schoolupwake.com. So you can always just email me. I do have a contact form on my website that's the easiest and probably fastest way to get a hold of me and schedule something. And those events are posted on there's a page with events on the website as well if you want to sign up for those. So that's probably the easiest. My social is School Up Wake, both on Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome.
Perfect. And that'll all be in the show notes.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to share, like school wise? Before we'll just ask a quick couple of fun questions about Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
Non-school. Any other questions?
I
Caroline?
just like to always leave everyone with the positive notion that there's more than one great school out there for you, and more than one great school fit for you. So if something's not working or you're worried about finding a school, rest assured there are a lot of great schools here in Raleigh, and you will find more than one of those.
That's great.
Awesome.
Very comforting.
Yeah. So you've got three children.
I do.
Remind me of their ages again.
I do. They're awesome. So one's 9, about to turn 10. One is 7, and one is 4.
Okay. What are a couple of fun family-based activities in the Raleigh area you like to do with your kids?
Ooh, okay. So let's see. My kids are very active and into sports. So most of the time we're at their sport. That's what we're doing most of the time. But no, so we really loved, lately we've gone to Tree Runner.
Okay.
The high ropes course.
Yep.
Love doing that.
Yeah, we love them.
My little one still loves to go to marbles.
Oh, yeah.
We
do that
spent
too.
many an
It's
hour.
great,
at marbles.
Mum.
Yes.
Like it's hard to beat.
Have you
for
done
that age.
your kids are older, but the Christmas event they do.
No,
It's
we never
amazing
did
for
that.
little ones.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
It's
Okay.
magical.
Is that like a one day
They
thing?
do
Or-
it. I think it's always the first weekend in December.
Mhm.
I remember seeing the ads for
Evening
it.
with
yeah.
the elves at Marbles
wow.
Kids Museum, and they wear their jammies.
Oh,
and there's
fun.
a DJ and a dance party.
Oh,
It's amazing.
yeah.
So
Awesome.
shout out to them. It's amazing.
There you go.
Yeah,
2022,
Marbles has got it
Christmas at
going on.
Marbles.
yeah.
That's cool.
You guys have a favorite getaway spot in North Carolina for a family?
Ooh, in North Carolina? No.
But you can say where.
Out of the
As a
state?
family,
Out of
my
state's
husband's
fine.
a big mountain biker, so he loves to
Okay.
go to, is it Brevard?
Oh, yeah,
He goes
yeah,
there
yeah.
a lot to
Yep.
mountain bike. I keep
Okay.
teasing him. He needs to actually take the family, but he
Yeah.
goes with his buddies. So I grew up in the Midwest, so we go to Lake Michigan in the summer when it's so hot here you can't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do. We go to Michigan, but mostly in North Carolina, I'd say we probably go to the beach to
Yeah.
Mhm.
Wilmington. Probably.
Yeah,
Or
yep.
Graceville Beach.
It's
we
the
love
easiest.
Wilmington.
Yeah, we
Easiest one
usually
to
do
get
one
there.
weekend there.
It's
Yeah.
the closest beach, and
Yeah.
it's a great beach.
We love it
Yeah.
there.
We like the
Crazy on a Sunday
At
or
Lake
weekend.
Michigan, they have all the T-shirts that say "unsalted."
Ah.
a Great Lake and not the ocean.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
where we
I like
go.
that. That's cool.
Well, we
That's cool.
like our salt air and salt
Yes,
water.
I like both.
I like
I like
both too. I like both. No sharks
Chicken.
in the unsalted world.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, Michigan, it's on our list. We've been to like 40 something states, but we haven't been to Michigan yet.
Oh.
But
I've heard it's
Michigan's
amazing.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
For the outdoors.
I think most people don't know what Great Lakes really look like, but it
Yeah.
is white sand beaches,
Mm.
and blue green water. It is very cold water.
I was
so
going
will
to say,
warn
is it
you about
cold?
that.
Okay.
We're
Imagine.
actually headed there next week. We like to go, and
Oh, at
we've
this
been
time of
teaching the
year?
kids how to ski.
Oh,
And you can't even imagine the snow. It's amazing.
You can ski in Michigan.
Yep,
because I
they
always
have.
think
Yep.
it's pretty flat.
Yep. So we go
no?
all the way up north. Nope,
Yeah,
there's
right.
several different ski hills
Huh.
there. Yeah, it's great. I think for beginners because they're not huge.
Yeah.
It's not like skiing out in Colorado.
Uh-huh.
So for my little ones who I'm just teaching, we started teaching my daughter when she was 3 last year.
Yeah.
With holding her between my legs, like you do. So yeah, but the snow will be up to their armpits.
Oh, I can imagine.
It's
That far
great.
north.
It's
Yeah.
just so fun and different. Yeah.
Way
Oh,
different
wow,
to
how
Raleigh.
fun.
Like
Yeah.
Get a few
With our
flurries.
70-degree
flurries.
I
and,
know.
the place shuts down. And then, like,
Yeah.
Last week it was snowing. Today it's 70 degrees.
Yeah, I know.
it's
That's
just
really
wait
fun. Your
a
sinuses
day
go
or a few
crazy.
hours and the weather changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.